Hello, welcome back to the Plagiarism tutorial brought to you by the library and the TAMU CC Writing Center. This module will talk about citing your sources. In today's video, we are going to discuss in-text citations, and we'll look at the difference between quotations, paraphrasing, and summarizing. So first, a quick recap. Remember, plagiarism is misusing your sources. So how do you use a source correctly? Well, you can avoid the misuse of sources by going to the various manuals and citation styles that exist. Remember to ask your professor which citation style you're wanting to use. Now, each citation style is going to have different types of influences. For the majority of this presentation, we are going to focus on MLA and APA as they are the most common ones. But all citation styles have different influences depending on which citation style you are using. MLA, or the Modern Languages Association, tends to focus on material researched about literature. So MLA tends to emphasize using the exact wording of a document. So they're more prone to using direct quotations. Whereas APA, or the American Psychological Association, lends itself to the soft sciences, such as sociology, psychology, and any of the other sciences that fall under the humanities. Because we are not actively researching the exact wording of a document, but more the main concepts of the ideas, APA tends to lend itself more to a paraphrasing that emphasizes the main concepts. But once again, please remember, ask your professor which style they prefer. Sometimes your grade depends on it. There are two different ways to cite. One will be in-text citations, and one will be the final references page. For this particular module, we'll just look at the in-text citations. This is a method of providing credit to the original source of quoted, paraphrased, or summarized material in your paper. A parenthetical citation is what you will see set off in parentheses at the end of a sentence. It might have something like the author's last name and the year if you're using APA, or if you're using MLA, it'll have the author's last name and a page number. You can also use a narrative in-text citation. That just means the citation is part of the sentence. So you can see in the example, Smith 2020 states ... That just means that you put the author's name in the sentence. Once again, the format of this citation is going to depend strictly on the type of citation style you are using. For example, Chicago has two different types of in-text citations, one being footnotes, one being author and date. IEEE uses a superscript number. Well, you get the idea. Take a moment to pause and read through this particular chart. It explains to you the difference between a quotation and a paraphrase. So when do you use a direct quotation in your writing? You're going to use a direct quotation when language is especially expressive or vivid. So if you can't write it any better than they've already written it, you can directly quote it. When exact wording is needed for accuracy, when it is important to let the debaters of an issue explain their positions in their own words. For example, if you have an author that is speaking on a problematic issue, or perhaps an issue you disagree with, then you can use their words to let them explain their own positions. You can also use a direct quotation when the words of authority lend weight to an argument, or when the language is the source of the topic. So if you can't use a quotation, well, what are you going to do? That's where paraphrasing comes in. You will use paraphrasing to convey the ideas of a source in your own words, or to explain or illustrate a point, to include details of a source without using the exact words or structure, or to show your audience, and this is a big one, that you understand your source. You may have heard the phrase, If you can teach it to somebody else, you can show that you've understood it. That's what this means, basically. So take a look at this chart, pause the video, and take a moment to read over the differences between paraphrase and summary, and then we'll move on. So when should you use summarizing in your writing? That's a great question. It is very tempting to want to go and summarize an entire topic before you start actively writing your papers. Unfortunately, that is not usually what the professor has asked you to do. So you should only use summarizing when you want to express the main ideas of a source without including the supporting details, or to condense a source's information. Now, let's move on to the paraphrasing. So let's just say your friend asks you, have you seen this particular movie? You say no, and your friend goes, that's awesome. There is a scene that I think is amazing, and here's what happens. And then your friend goes through and tells you what happens in the scene. He's not expressing it to you verbatim, as it would be in the movie. He's just kind of glossing over it. But he hits all of the main points. He hits all of the main topics. And he includes some supporting details that aren't necessarily verbatim, but are there. That is paraphrasing. So if you kind of keep that in your mind, it's a little bit easier to grasp the difference between paraphrasing and summarizing. So what happens when it comes time to start writing? It is going to be easy to accidentally plagiarize when you are paraphrasing and summarizing, because these are skills that require practice. So to avoid plagiarizing when you are summarizing or paraphrasing, resist the urge to look at the source while writing. This will help you avoid patch writing, which, if you'll remember, I spoke about in Module 2. Read your passage and then reread it as needed to ensure that you understand what's being said. Now take the passage, put it aside, turn it over, make sure you're not looking at it, and then ask yourself, what is the author saying? And then say it out loud, write it down, however you want to do it. Once you've done that, compare it to what you just read. If it's still off, start over. You can do this as many times as you want. It'll take a little bit of time in the beginning, but as you move through this practice, you'll get better and better. We are glad you sat and watched through Module 4. We'll see you in Module 5, our final module.